Dr. Dennis Perman could be described as a nice guy with a lot of great ideas, but you'd be missing a lot. He is a chiropractic coach and the co-founder of Master Circle Global, which offers chiropractic coaching, chiropractic practice management, and much more. One of the first master trainers for Tony Robbins, today Dennis will tell us about his original concepts of capacity technology and identity-based consulting. Stay tuned. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. All right, so I am here today with my good old friend, Dennis. How's it going, Dennis?
Oh, it's going swell, Doug. It's going swell. I'm very flattered that you
Oh my God, it's such a pleasure to have you, and it's an honor to have you here. You have accomplished so much in life, not the least of it. Did you just tell me before we got on air that you are publishing a book that's like 250 pages of songs you've written?
Yes, please. Okay. Well, all of us, you get to a certain age and you look back over many different chapters of your life. And, I'm very fortunate that I've been happily married with the same woman for now over 50 years. I have work that I really enjoy. I've got 3 healthy, wonderful children that have families of their own. So you look back over the chapters of your life and you think, okay, well, what did I trade this life in for? What have I used my time to accomplish? And of course, we have many different talents. You're in addition to your amazing skills in coaching and hypnosis, you're also a musician. You also operate a tractor. I now learned. I had no idea. It's not exactly the image I had of you in the past, that you sitting on a tractor, but okay, you know what? That's how we grow, by stretching ourselves. So I actually played music professionally for many years. I helped to put myself through chiropractic college performing. And prior to that, I was in rock bands. And in college, I had a partner, Mitch Clarvett, who we to this day have maintained a tremendous friendship. And one of the things you learn in coaching is that relationships are immensely valuable. One of the most important things that you can do is generate relationships with people. And some of them are relationships with significant others that you and I both have an amazing experience with. Some is with fellow professionals like you and I, getting the opportunity to have this kind of conversation. And of course, the relationship you have with your clientele is critically important. We'll get into talking about relationship theory later, I'm sure. But anyway, my relationship with my partner, Mitchell, goes back now, as I said, 50 years. I actually met him before I met my wife, Regina. So in September of 1970, on the park benches outside the snack bar at Johns Hopkins University, I saw this weird guy with long hair. I remember it was 1970, so long hair was completely appropriate at the time. Banging on a guitar. And I said, hey, I play guitar too. He said, really? Why don't you get your guitar and we'll jam? And that was the beginning of this relationship. So, I put together an anthology of our best lyrics over the last 50 years called The Rock Poetry of Perman Clarvett, a 50-year retrospect. So it's, as I was telling you before, I enjoy the printed word as much as I do the spoken word. In fact, if you add up my 7 books and my hundreds of newsletters and my thousands of online columns, I'm pretty sure I'm about 1 million words in print or something like that. So it's, you think I'd be better after all.
Well, I didn't want to say that out loud, but yeah, I think.
Well, you need to. I do. One of the greatest things about being a coach is the ongoing drive to become better yourself. You see, I have the privilege of coaching not only people who are in dire need, but many very successful people. My coaching work is primarily with professionals, especially chiropractors, doctors of chiropractic. I have other wellness professionals I coach as well. But it's a multifaceted way to practice coaching, because they obviously need business coaching, but they all need relationship and leadership coaching, and they all need communications coaching, and they all need financial coaching. So it becomes this tangled web of extraordinary opportunities to be of service to people. And it's what appeals to me most about the coaching world is that I will never be bored 1 minute for the rest of my life because I'm always either with somebody or by myself.
Well, that's a pretty low bar to set right there, but yes. if that's what makes you happy, then you'll never be bored. That's for sure.
But, that's like you may remember, we go back to Tony Robbins' days, 30 plus years ago, where Tony was talking about evidence procedures, about criteria, about how you're having a good day or something like that. And he called on one Yahoo, and the guy said, he said, I got to get out of bed at 5:30 and exercise for 2 hours. And then I've got to meditate, and then I've got to pray. And then and my body weight has to be like no more than 3%. And he had this long list of criteria for having a great day. Well, Tony said, is there anybody who has like an easier way to get into a great day? And this trainer, Larry Duran, stood up and said, yeah, Tony. He said, if I look down and I see the ground, I know it's going to be a great day because every day above ground is a great day. So, you're talking about me setting the bar low. I do it deliberately so that I always have the greatest day possible.
I've thought many times about that experience. Every day above ground is a great day. Dennis Perman, yes, you have been a friend of mine since like 1985 when we were both back in the days. I was a few podcasts ago, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with Skip Lackey.
Skip,
I know, amazing guy. And yes, he, like us, have been New York City, firewalkers since those days. And you come from, I think you did it actually before me. I think you were at the chiropractic. Wasn't your first firewalk the chiropractic firewalk?
Yeah. What had happened was Tony came in as a guest speaker, and he blew the walls out. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. For Marks and Management, which was the company that is the precursor of the company that I now own. Larry was my coach at the time.
So this is a chiropractic consultant company?
Yeah, there's a chiropractic coaching consulting firm. Well, Marks and Management evolved into the Masters, evolved into the Master Circle, evolved into the Master Circle Global, which it is now. Larry is long retired, and my partner is Dr. Bob Hoffman. We worked together to coach many chiropractors. In our heyday, we had as many as 1,000 offices. It was a pretty extraordinary place. Well, those were not offices that we owned. Those were 1,000 member offices that we had 1,000 doctors that we were serving. Well, the law of the few, the law of the many for those Malcolm Gladwell fans. There was no way we could sustain the weight of that. So it actually exploded into about 10 pieces, and everybody took their pound of flesh. So Bob and I have a smaller consulting company now where we get to coach a couple hundred chiropractors, but it's more to our liking because instead of all of our time being eaten up running a large corporation, we now are in the trenches serving patients and doctors, which is really what we always wanted to do in the first place. So it's not a weenie company. It's a good company, but it's not what it was 15 years ago when it was just the biggest thing anybody.
So one of the reasons I started this podcast is I've been a coach for a long time, and I learned coaching from a guy named Thomas Leonard a long time ago. And
yes, Coach.
What's that? Yeah.
Coach you, one of the greatest ever.
And I'm aware that the profession has grown a great deal. There's a lot of coaches, a lot of places you can learn coaching, a lot of different types of coaching. One of the things that Thomas Leonard emphasized back in the day was that coaching is not consulting. Coaching is not consulting. That you can be a consultant if, for instance, you are a great chiropractor and you've done created a successful business of your own in the chiropractic world, that you can consult with other chiropractors to help them, sort out their business to make it successful as well. What to you is the difference between chiropractic consulting and chiropractic coaching?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's a bold distinction that many people who consider themselves coaches miss. Consulting is about downloading information. It's about teaching and educating and giving people pieces of the puzzle. Coaching is about discovery. It's about asking questions and pointing at things and inviting people to notice them. So for me, the coaching process is far more interesting because when I'm just downloading information, I even bore myself. It's like, really? And look, over 40 years of doing this, I've accumulated a whole lot of information. If you want to see, all these books and columns and all this stuff that I've done, I have tons of information. But there's nothing as juicy as having the experience of pointing at something, having somebody notice it for the first time, and then rooting them on as they take it and run with it and make a huge difference in their lives and the lives of people they serve. So for me, consulting is basically an outflow where coaching is a joint flow. It's where we work together to create something. And I try desperately not to be the source of the most important content. Now, this gets back to our training years ago in NLP and the meta model, recognizing that when you work content free, you give somebody the opportunity to expose and exploit their own creativity.
Well, let me just stop you there, Dennis, because that concept I was just talking about with some friends actually earlier today. What do you mean specifically by content free? How is it content free? What do you mean by that?
Yes. If I ask a question, what would it take for you to make $1 million next year? Mm-hmm. Then that's an inviting question, but I'm leading the person by saying I expect them to meet my standard of $1 million practice. Gotcha. If I said, what would you consider a successful income in your practice? Now I'm leaving a space for them to be able to develop based on where they are right now and what their dream is, what might be most appropriate for them. Some people will be bowled away by the idea of $1 million practice. Others are like, why only $1 million?
So when you say content free,
I don't want to imprison them with
when you say content free, it means that you're not supplying content to their envisioning of whether it's going to be. Okay.
Yes. Well, look, I mean, the classic question is, how is it possible that he is doing that? That leaves all the content out. Now, coaching, if you're going to ask good questions, then you have to pick and choose your times to introduce any content. I have loads of content. For example, I believe that growth is based on two critical factors: the ability to generate capacity, room to grow, and the ability to generate attraction to fill your capacity. So growth for my doctors is about building capacity. I'm sure we'll get into the technology of that as we go forward, and then filling that with attraction. And then building more capacity and filling that with attraction and keeping on doing that process of building and filling until you reach the level that you want to be at. Now, I can't imprison the people I work with by expecting them to think like me, act like me, have my beliefs, have my distinctions, have my values, have my experiences. They don't. They simply don't. So I have to work with what they have. Now, in NLP, we learn that people do the best they can with the resources they have available. And most people concentrate on the word resources, and I do too. But the real operative word in that tenet is available. Because everybody has loads of resources to work with that are not currently available because they haven't learned how to extract them and apply them in specific contexts.
Exactly. So our job is then to help them get access to the resources that they have. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I developed loads of technology for doing that, as I know you have. Some take a more hypnotic route. Some take a more metaphysical route. Some take a more clinical route. Doesn't matter, because all roads lead to Rome on that. If you help people understand that they are not broken, they don't need to be fixed, that they have what they need to be successful, just that by itself is revolutionary for most people. Haven't you noticed that as well?
Yeah, and that is one of the beautiful things about NLP, is it taught us those sort of basic presuppositions about human beings and availability, and that presupposition of people do the best they can with the resources they have. It's not only a belief that is useful as a coach to have, or as a therapist to have, or as a human being to have, but yeah, absolutely. It is when you're looking at it from a business perspective, it's like, yeah, those are the resources I have available. How do I get access to more resources to expand that capacity, to have more attraction, to do those things that you're talking about? It's brilliant.
Indeed. So for me, resources fall into two categories. One is totally self-contained. I call those states. And from NLP, that's what you're doing with your mind and body. So confidence and motivation and focus and self-discipline and happiness, those are all inside out. But some resources require an engagement of the external. You have to have some training, or you have to get some information, or you have to have somebody else involved. I call those skills or roles. So I have different technology for developing states than I do for developing skills and roles. And this way, as I can start to identify the map of the person's identity, what they really need to gain access to in order to be a fully self-actualized version of themselves, that directs me toward the technology that I use. What separates my company from all the other companies that purport to be like it is that we are identity-based. In other words, we believe that who you are determines how well what you do works, that success comes from you, not to you. And this is a revolution in our field. I know it exists in yours and in others, but in our field, it's primarily strategy-based. Here's how you get new patients, and here's how you do a report of findings, and here's how you manage your money. We do all those things. But the thing is, depending on what resources you have available, depending on what your self-concept is, what your identity is, that's going to determine how well you can integrate these various ideas. So the reason our company is so special is because we combine the strategy-based approach with an expansive identity-based approach, and it's been very successful.
That's I think, amazingly great, because it is the combination. It's not one or the other, I don't think. It's curious. When we were at Tony Robbins a number of years ago, I was talking about this earlier again. I remember Stephen Covey's visit to one of the Master University evenings, and Stephen Covey's whole thing was his first book. Ironically, his first book was called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is the first book that I know of. And the second book was called First Things First. I'm thinking, shouldn't you have written that second book? But nevertheless, really good ideas. And one of the points that he made when he was writing 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is he studied like years, decades, centuries worth of self-help books, and discovered that for a long time, self-help was not about strategies at all. It was about character. It was about character, like Benjamin Franklin's, 13 virtues. It's about building the character. If you build yourself into a superior man, according to Franklin, then, success would flow to you. Later on, after I think it was probably Think and Grow Rich or something, it started,
Napoleon Hill,
it started to become more about strategy based, and so you got to how to win friends and influence people, how to do these different things, and it became that strategy based thing. But what you're talking about is, in a sense, it's doing both. Having
it is it's a fusion, because being without doing is fantasy, doing without being is drudgery.
Nice.
So the key
is that a Dennis Perman? Is that a?
I just made it up on the spot, actually.
That's great. That's bumper sticker worthy. That is. Did you say that again?
Because I'm no idea. I would have liked to.
Please try.
Yeah, I said identity. I said being without doing is fantasy, and doing without being is drudgery.
That's great. I like that.
So you inspire me, O'Brien. What can I say? You bring out the best of me. You always have. So anyway. The idea is to flavor this so that you have the right amount of being and the right amount of doing, because that's what creates the right amount of have.
Right.
You see, and I've developed lengthy talks on this, which I'm not going to go too deeply into right now. But you see, studying capacity, it helps you to understand some very simply understood concepts. The first of which is just that you can't get 9 ounces into an 8-ounce glass. Now, if you're expecting me to say something deep, I'm not. That's just it. You can't get 9 ounces into an 8-ounce glass. Now, you can get 2 ounces into it, or 4 or 6, or even 7.9. But once you get to 8 ounces, no more room. Now, you face a crossroads there. You can take some of what's in the glass out and put some new stuff in, and that's what most people do. Or you can get a bigger glass. You see, you're not locked into 8 ounces. It's just a metaphor. So the key is, if you can't get 9 ounces into an 8-ounce glass, how does that actually work? Well, the first thing you need to know is that there's only 2 kinds of things in the world. There's the things you can do something about, and there's the things you can't do nothing about. And it's the height of insanity to put energy and focus and time and attention and effort into things you can't do anything about. And yet, how many people are spending all their time worried about the weather, about the government, about what the banks are going to do, about what organized health is going to do? I mean, it's a total waste of time and energy. If we can learn to stay focused on the things that we can actually do something about, then at the very least, we fill our 8 ounces with something worthwhile. Now, that brings up the second key, which is that you can only grow as great as your weaker areas permit. Now, this is counterintuitive. Most people who teach success say, well, you can't be good at everything, so max out your strengths. I disagree. Maxing out your strengths is guaranteed to bang your head against 8 ounces every time, because all you can get to is what your strengths now demonstrate. The moment you begin to work on your weaker areas, I don't call them weaknesses because they may not be weaknesses. They may only be weaker by comparison to your strengths. When you build your weaker areas, your strengths can take you that much farther. The metaphor I use for that is driving a car. When you put your foot down on the gas, you go. If you put your foot down on the brake, you stop. But what happens if you put your foot down on the gas and the brake at the same time? You stop. You may lurch around a little bit if you gun the gas against the brake, but you're not going anywhere until you take your foot up off the brake. The moment you do, the gentlest pressure on the accelerator takes you forward. So the key here is to recognize that the weaker areas are there as guideposts to help you understand where you need to develop yourself. That's where coaching comes in, because most people have blind spots when it comes to these weaker areas. They're so consumed with trying to play their strengths. And it's not that they shouldn't play their strengths. You must play your strengths. But your strengths will take you farther if you develop your weaker areas. I used to be rotten at time management. Doug, by the way, did I call exactly at the
As a matter of fact, you did, Dennis.
Exactly, on the minute. That's because now, as a reformed time abuser, when I don't manage my time effectively, it causes physical pain. And I don't like physical pain much. So for me, time management was a weaker area. I had to learn to develop it, and I have scads of tools on how to develop it. But the fact of the matter is, not only did I get better at time management, but all my other strengths got better because it was not encumbered by my foot on the brake of poor time management. So, you know, this is a big chunk of my coaching. Now, if all you do is work on weaker areas, though, people start to feel like a big bag of weaker areas and they get unhappy. So you have to make sure when you coach to point out the victories and to celebrate them, as well as pointing out the growing edges. Because if you fail to do so, then people will grow from your coaching, but they won't like you very much.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm insecure enough, and I would venture a guess that you might feel the same way, that I want the people I work with to like me as well as respect.
Yeah, no, it's nice to have both. I mean, clearly the respect and feeling the value of it is what they're paying me for. But I'd like to be liked as well, certainly. This is great, Dennis. My goodness gracious, this is you're the kind of guest that I love having on here. I just go like, "Hey, how are you?" And then I just sit back. Let's sit back and listen.
Remember, I've logged 40,000 hours on the phone talking to people doing this. So if I run out of material in this kind of a class, shoot me now and get it over with. You know.
You know, just as an aside, you know, because people could read your things. There's lots of material and stuff on you, but it just reminiscing a bit. You know, when I first started doing NLP trainings by myself in New York City, I recognized the value of things when we used to go to Tony Robbins' mastery or even his certification course. First NLP certification course we did, I think we were at the same one. You know, Tony had 15 days of teaching NLP and had all these different people, but he also brought in Richard Bandler. He also brought in Robert Dilts. Yeah. He also brought in Dave Dobson. Yeah. He also brought in all these different people who were very different from him. And it was able to, you know, see these differences and how valuable they were. I mean, Richard Bandler is nothing like Tony Robbins, you know, and yet, wow, you know, amazing stuff that he does with Tony's technology too. It's amazing how he learned it so quick. And because we used to call it Tony's technology.
My favorite Bandler video is, and you know what a master of tonality he is and modulation. He's sitting at the front of the room and he says, So everybody make sure not to go into a trance. And you hear a coffee cup fall on the floor. Yeah. Tony was obviously more balls out. Richard is more mysterious and bizarre. But personal change technology is not a thing. It's a conceptual opportunity. So you may do it differently from the way I do it. I may do it differently from the way Tony does it. He does it differently from the way Richard does it. But the outcome is to help people explore their greatness. Yeah. People may not language it that way. I do, because I spend a lot of time on stage. I got to do glitzy stuff that sounds glorious. But really, in essence, that's what we're doing as coaches, is helping people to appreciate and to explore their own greatness. I've never met a single client, doctor or otherwise, who didn't have much more to offer than they were currently expressing.
Oh, my
goodness. Is that your experience too?
Yes, absolutely. So I just wanted to say, when I first started doing my own trainings in New York City, I appreciated the value of having those different voices coming in. And so I brought you and others in to do training, do an afternoon or whatever for me in those trainings. And that was just an amazing thing. I mean, the value that you bring when you do teaching, when you do coaching is just so amazing. And that wasn't just me who recognized it. You did that for Tony too, right? After I left, after 1995, when I exited the Robbins world, you continued on, did you not? You were training trainers.
For a while, yes. And I think you have a rare distinction of leaving the Robbins community on very good terms. Not everybody does, and I don't fault Tony for that. It's just, he was so intense and so far above most people's level of thinking that it doesn't shock me that not everybody was able to hang on for all that long. It's like staring into a bright light. It's like, at first it's like, oh my God, it's such a bright light. And eventually it's like your head starts to hurt. So, for Regina and me, we hung around for a while because first we got a lot out of it, but also more importantly, we were able to give a lot. And, Regina's she practices to this day, as a pediatric physical therapist, chasing babies around the floor. She's not a kid anymore. She's doing it 45 years. And yet she's never lost the enthusiasm for helping people. And likewise me, I work 70, 80 hours a week. I'm not a kid. I'm going to be 68 in a couple of weeks. And the truth is, I feel like I'm early in the second half. I feel like I got a lot of tread left on me. So, what I gleaned from Tony was far beyond the technology, much of which I've moved past and developed my own. It was really more about the idea of personal power, the idea of transforming fear into power, one of his very core original concepts, the idea that everybody has extraordinary potential, but we don't all necessarily know how to use it or develop it. That's where capacity was born. See, everybody has unlimited potential, but they only gain access to a portion of it. The portion of your potential you currently have access to is your capacity. So that's what gave rise to, you can't get 9 ounces into an 8-ounce glass. That's where the resource builder came from, my habit formation pyramid. If we have time, we can talk about all these things if you like to, but we may not want to get into the weeds of coaching technique. But suffice it to say that if all you have is a hammer, then all your problems start to look like nails. If you have a vast array of tools, then you'll find that you attract people of all different kinds with all different kinds of issues, and you get to expand what you have to offer dramatically. So that's how I didn't originally know how to do all the things that I do. I discovered them along the way. The discovery process in the coaching environment goes both ways. Yes, you want to help the person to discover, but I want to discover also. That's what keeps me engaged. Is that your experience as well?
And that's brilliant. And I could have you on for a dozen, and I'm sure we would never stop talking about fascinating things. Just in case I don't, however, let me just ask you this. For the people listening, if people are just starting out in coaching, right? They're just taking their first, coaching certification, they just got their, coaching certificate or whatever. If they're just starting off in the business, What do you think is
Yes.
like really essential for them to have to know to get them going, to have them be a good coach? What does a coach have to have? What's an essential coaching skill?
Okay, it's a huge and critically important question. For me, the first thing that a coach must be able to express is
Service consciousness. Tell me about that.
Yeah, because too often what happens, especially with people who are very glib and knowledgeable like yourself and myself, sometimes we fall in love with the sound of our own voices. And it isn't so much about what you say as to what you inspire the person to say to themselves inside their head. So service is the critical key from my point of view. If you go into coaching because you want to, be a star, try show business. That's where stars are. If you want to be a star coach, the first thing that has to happen is your client needs to know that you care as much about them as they care about themselves. Because in the absence of that, it becomes consulting. You're just downloading stuff on them. You see, the coaching experience is always a partnership. It's a shared experience where you help the person to get an awareness of their own greatness by pointing at things that they might not necessarily already notice. Now, this is one of the metaphors that I use, the metaphor of the bay. I live in a very beautiful home, as we've spoken about, and right outside my window is this gorgeous bay, Northport Bay, and it's magnificent. There's seabirds in the sky, there's mansions ringing the bay, there's sailboats out. I mean, it's beautiful. It's idyllic. And when I go out and stand on the beach just outside my door, I feel this feeling of greatness, this feeling I'm huge. I'm connected to something so big and so powerful. And at the same time, I feel puny, like a grain of sand, like I'm just this little tiny bit of stuff that gets to be a part of this huge continuum of greatness. Well, don't you know, when I turn my attention away from the beach, when I start looking back into the driveway, those feelings start to fade. Well, wait a minute. Why are they fading? Isn't the bay still there? Well, the bay is still there, but it was my focus that wandered. Yeah. So the key here is your resources are a lot like the bay. They're there. Everybody has been confident and motivated and focused and disciplined and had good self-esteem and good creativity. Everybody's had that somewhere along the line. But you see, if we turn our attention away from that, it feels like it's not there. I look at my job as a coach to reawaken people's awareness of their own qualities. If I can, now look, there are times when you have to work on developing things. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to pretend otherwise. People are not necessarily fully formed in every aspect. That's why they may have their foot on the brake to deal with weaker areas and stuff like that. But the key is they have the raw potential to be able to develop anything. You see athletes who don't have the physical prowess that maybe some other stars might have, and yet they outperform. A Wayne Gretzky, for example. You ask Gretzky, I'm not really a hockey guy, I'm a baseball guy, but you ask Gretzky, how come you're so great? And he says, because most people go to where the puck is, I go to where the puck's going to be. Okay? And that sixth sense, that awareness, that helped him to become the greatest of all time. Yeah. Now, we are exactly the same as that. The moment that we feel imprisoned by what we have to currently work with, we're at 8 ounces. Yeah. We're stuck. The moment that we recognize that we can get a bigger glass and we can grow our capacity, then we end up having an open-ended upward spiral that never ends. That's right. Now, Doug, we talked about capacity a lot, but we haven't talked about attraction very much. Can we redirect our attention there for a moment? So, anybody who's seen The Secret or read the books or the law of attraction has been around for a long, long time. But for me, it's actually a very simple thing. If you learn to visualize and affirm, then you have an excellent chance of invoking the law of attraction. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. So one of the things I teach my clients is to develop a powerful morning routine, where every morning they exercise their sense of self by noticing where are they authentic, where are they present, where are they still weaker, what kinds of things might they need to do in order to generate more power. By visualizing and affirming those things, they actually activate them in their own experience. Because, I think it was Maxwell Maltz that said the subconscious mind can't tell the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. So if you get people to vividly imagine things, your subconscious begins to act as if it is already true. Now, that turned up too high, that can be delusion. Gene Houston said, often our weaknesses are our strengths turned up a little too high.
Sure.
But the issue is, you'll know. It's something that it's unavoidable. You'll be able to tell when you're trying to push yourself too hard past a certain point. So the rhythm is to build capacity and then to fill it with attraction. And then build more capacity and fill that with attraction, and then build more capacity and fill that with attraction until you get to the desired level. So I have doctors who have outperformed world records. They've done things nobody else even imagined possible just by using this very simple formula of building capacity and filling it with attraction until they got to the next level. Some people, based on personality, don't appreciate the idea of having any limitations whatsoever, so they keep on building no matter what it is. And there have been some extraordinary results based on that. So I just wanted to make sure to mention the law of attraction.
Can you give us an example of what that morning routine might be?
Sure. For me personally, now remember, I'm doing this a long, long time. So I've developed a personal way of doing this. The first thing I do in the morning is I do Michael Gelb's Qigong movements that reflect Leonardo da Vinci's creative genius principles.
Everybody knows that, so let's go on to the next thing. I'm just kidding. What the heck is that? What is that?
Okay, well, since we're not on video, I'm not going to demonstrate the actual movements. But Da Vinci's principles are curiosità. First, you have to be curious about things. Dimostrazione, which is where you inspect and notice the things that are going on around you. Sensazione, where you use your senses to deeply explore what you see. Sfumato, which is understanding the mystery of creativity and looking for that point of light in the darkness. Arte Scienza, the fifth principle, which is the fusion of arts and sciences. That's where left and right brain come together. Corporalità, which is physical health. Most people don't realize that Da Vinci was the strongest man in Venice. He was the fittest man in really? Italy at the time. And then finally, connessione, which is the interconnectedness of all things. So Michael Gelb, I tell you, if people want to take one thing away from this, to read books by Michael Gelb, they got something. Because Gelb is a mentor of mine. He's a phenomenal human being, and he's one of the world's experts on Da Vinci. He actually learned Italian so he could go back and study Da Vinci's original notebooks in the native Italian. And he's the one who called these 7 principles. Anyway, Gelb put together 7 Qigong movements that I do each morning to start my day so that I turn on my creative genius.
So let me just stop you there, because I have studied Qigong. You and I used to do some push hands together. I don't know if you're there or not.
Sure, absolutely.
So just so people have an idea of what we're talking about, Michael Gelb created a movement series.
7 postures, seven simple movements, each of which exemplifies. Well, it's a metaphor. I mean, obviously, if I go like this and like this, does that mean curiosity? Well, I'm defining it that it means curiosity. Like nothing has any meaning but the meaning we give it, right? So I use these 7 movements to begin my day so that I awaken my creative genius to begin.
Gotcha. And what would be an example of one of Michael Gelb's book? How to Think Like Leonardo?
Oh, gee. Let's see. Innovate Like Edison. Wine Drinking for Inspired Thinking.
One is, of course, How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Well, right, exactly. How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci. And actually, he and I did a recording of How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci for chiropractors. So we actually took the 7 principles and digested them and had a 8-hour conversation about them and recorded. So anyway, Gelb is brilliant. He's an amazing Renaissance man. Not too much into idol worship right now, but he is excellent at everything he does. He's a incredible speaker and author. He's got about a dozen incredible books. He's He's an Aikido master.
Let me just stop you there, Dennis.
Expert.
So just let me stop you there. So he's cool. Got that down. But I want to know about you. So you.
Yeah. The rest of my morning routine. So then I do the 3 treasures meditation. Again, I learned that from Gelb, where you concentrate first on your mind, then on your gut, finally on your heart. And there's some movements that you do with those as well. So that's a quiet moving meditation that I do. Then I do the Tai Chi short form, the Yang short form. And then I finish with a yoga exercise I learned from my wife called the Breath of Joy. It's a very simple exercise. She learned it from, now I'm blanking on the poet's name. This wonderful poet, I'll have to get it for you. Dana Folds, that's what it is. Dana Folds, Faulds, I believe, has written some amazing poetry, and she and her husband do presentations on poetry and on yoga. So that's my morning routine. Anyway, for most people, something as simple as a simple affirmation. Today's going to be a great day. Then you don't need to get into the weeds. I'm 40 years deep in this kind of stuff. So for me, it takes a lot to get me off. But for a normal person, if you wake up, smile, say today's going to be a great day, stretch overhead, take a few deep breaths. You know what? You started your day off on positive.
So that's me just getting back to what we're talking about here is the 2 parts that are required for growth is capacity and then attraction. So this is the attraction part. So this is how you bring attraction.
Well, this is one. Well, actually, morning routine contributes to both capacity and attraction. You see, most people, their morning routine is they wake up, they burp, they fart, they go into the bathroom.
Hey, you've been watching me? Is there a camera in here? That's scary, man. That's just weird.
And then, they have a cup of coffee and a donut.
Oh,
and
my God,
day.
that's incredible. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't do that. For me, my morning food, I do a Rock and Wellness shake with almond milk, bananas, and raspberries. I do Immunocal, which is a glutathione precursor that wakes up my brain. And Regina makes a phenomenal vegetable juice with an assortment of vegetables every morning. So that's my morning food. So between my morning routine and my morning food, I'm turbocharged to start my day.
Right.
And, you can see I'm an old man, but I still have a lot of energy left. One of the reasons is because I work hard at building as much personal power as I possibly can, getting back to the basic concept we learned from Tony all those years ago. Like recognizing that you have personal power is a breakthrough for most people because it just doesn't even come up for most folks.
Gotcha. So that's really great because, it's interesting to listen to a person talk about concepts and ideas and stuff, but it's also really interesting to find out how they're actually doing this. How are they actually doing this? I remember watching a interview with the aforementioned author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, and he was at his house, and then he always talked about you set an appointment with yourself for a particular thing, and when that time comes, then you exercise integrity in the moment of choice, and you do the thing you set the appointment for. So he's in the middle of this interview, and it's this little alarm rings, and it's 2:00, and it's time to go for a bicycle ride with his wife. He says, "Well, excuse me, I've got to go for this bicycle ride with my wife." And they get on this bicycle built for 2, and they take this little bike ride back, so they finish the interview later. But that's how he lived his life.
That's congruence. That's congruent.
And that's how he lived his life. And people who are congruent, right? They talk these things, but they walk their talk. They do these things that they're going to be saying. So you get up in the morning and you do these things. You do the things that establish the capacities and the attraction. You do those things that are important to be done.
Indeed. Well, George Burns said, sincerity is the key. Once you can fake that, you got it made.
So that was George Burns now, was it?
It was.
I heard Tony say that.
I'm not surprised.
Oh, got it.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So, we got a lot of directions we can go. It feels like I've been yakking for a long time. I mean, are we done?
No, man, we're getting started. No, we can stop anytime you want, my friend.
Oh, yeah. No, I cleared the time, so I just don't want to bore your listeners.
I don't think that's going to be a possibility.
Okay.
So if people get one thing out of this thing, Michael Gelb's book, that'd be great. But we want more than just one thing. I've gotten so much out of this concept of the capacity and attraction, and I just want to make sure that I can leave and know this. And in fairness, because this is the Essential Coaching Skills podcast, one of the questions I often ask my guests as well is, if you want to be successful in business, what would be an essential skill? Now, I will say this about you. One of the challenges that sometimes people have is that they have trouble, let's just say challenge, defining a niche for themselves. Because obviously NLP, as an example, works for everybody who has a brain. It'll work for anybody who has a brain. So if people put themselves out as an NLP coach, I can fix anything. It's like, that's not finding a niche, and that's not going to work very well from a marketing perspective. Same thing with a lot of coaching. Coaching works. That's it. That's the statement. Coaching works. It'll work for anybody. But you, starting off from your business as a chiropractor in the chiropractic consulting businesses, defined your niche very early on. And you became not only just a consultant for chiropractors, but also then a coach for chiropractors. And it's really, you coach other people. But that often happens when people have a niche. They coach other people outside the niche. But the niche also gives you power, doesn't it?
It does. So I want to make sure that as we talk about niches, we're not talking about pigeonholes. Because too often what happens is, well, you made reference to it yourself. Opportunities come up for additional growth beyond the specific definition. Now, the story that comes up for me on this, one of my mentors in chiropractic is a guy named Guy Reekman. Guy has been president of several chiropractic colleges. He created one of the most influential philosophical organizations in the very beginning of my career, Renaissance. Guy, at one point, backed away from all this stuff. He just got burnt out and he went to hang out on the beach for a couple of years. And while he was there, he met some really influential people who were also burnt out and wanted to, come to the beach to hang out for a while. And he jokes, he says, you'd think you could get tired of the beach, but you can't. It was 2 years later. We weren't tired of the beach. It was nice to be there every day. He said, we wanted to grow and we all had a lot of money. So we figured, let's get really cool people to come in and do private workshops for our group. And they did that. They brought in all kinds of interesting, cool people to teach them what they wanted to hear about. Well, the marketing at the time, the marketing experts, the people who were at the top of the game were Al Reese and Jack Trout. And they're still around. They're still major players in every imaginable way. But Guy contacted them and said, we want you to come in and do a workshop for us. It's a weekend workshop. We're willing to pay you $40,000. I'd be there, wouldn't you?
I'd bring you along.
Well, they declined. They declined. And wasn't that at all. Guy said, you decline? Why would you decline? And their answer was, we don't see how coming to your group furthers our purpose. So you see, when you're talking about developing a niche, what's more important than the niche is the purpose. It's the why. Now, if your niche is supportive of your purpose, you're made in the shade. But if you select a niche that's just off or even very off of your purpose, prepare for pain, because you will have some. So the way I look at it, I look at niches as guideposts more than shackles. I don't want to be limited to just the chiropractor. Right now, I'm in the process of putting together a program for acupuncturists. And I've been teaching brain tap therapists, people who are using Patrick Porter's brain tap technology. And I even have a couple of private clients, I counsel in relationships. I'm not wild about depression and anxiety these days because, you get to a point that it bums you out. It's like, who wants to do that? But But even so, I have one lady who I work with, who I've been working with for 25 years. If I was a better therapist, maybe she'd be better. But the point is, I never wanted to feel like people are like, oh, that guy's a chiropractic coach, even though that's an accurate description of one of my roles. So we got to be very careful about being, they say get rich in your niche. I say you get rich by developing sufficient capacity and attraction. See, and if that involves being in a niche, great. But, what's Bill Gates' niche? What was Steve Jobs' niche? They had such lofty and grand expectations of themselves that yes, they had things that they did that were more their primary concerns, but they branched out into so many areas because their niche, quote unquote, led to more expansive opportunities. And that's making sure that we, yes, choose a focus, but don't feel imprisoned by it. Because sometimes it leads you to something that's even different and better. I would never have even thought of writing this book of song lyrics if I wasn't a songwriter for the last 50 years.
Yeah, right.
And it never occurred to me to write a book. I mean, songs are, you play the songs, Well, you write a book of song lyrics? That's kind of weird. And yet the poetry of the lyrics stood on its own, even without the instrumentation and the melody. So if I had only planned on being a songwriter, I never would have gotten to put together a book of song lyrics. So we just got to be careful about being in a niche. Yes, you can. It's like stronger areas, and it's like strengths and weaker areas.
Yeah.
Your niche is your strength, okay? But your weaker areas are where growth lives. Pleasure lives in your strengths, but growth lives in your weaker areas. So when you observe, wow, I'm not very good at this. One of the reasons I have a very physical morning routine is because I'm not a very physical person. I'm really more of a, thought guy, and a gut instinct guy. I built the morning routine of physicality because I recognize it as a weaker area for myself. And not only has it made my strengths stronger, but I've also learned to really enjoy it. Something that, 10 years ago, I would never have believed I could enjoy a physical morning routine. My morning routine back then was sitting quietly and meditating and breathing and visualizing and imagining my own great experiences. It's like, well, that's fun, but it gets boring after a while. Now I move around a little bit. It's twice as cool. So anyway. We have to learn to go beyond our self-concept. That's really what growth is, learning to go beyond your self-concept.
Dennis, thank you. This has been an incredible, it's been an hour. It's amazing to me.
It went pretty quick, didn't it?
It's like, hey, how are you? What? Wait, where'd you go? It's over. That's crazy. It's so good to see you again. Great to hear your voice, and thank you so much for all that you've shared with us. And hopefully maybe I could get you back here sometime.
It's my great pleasure. Tony taught me a long time ago that there are 4 kinds of leadership, 4 levels of leadership. First, just to be able to lead yourself. And truthfully, most people never even really get there. Second, to be able to lead someone else. Third, to be able to lead a group. But the highest form of leadership is to be able to lead without being physically present. That your ideas and your vibrations and your what you leave when you're not there is something that influences people. So you give me this great opportunity to share what I've learned with people I may never get to meet personally, but I look at it as a tremendous gift that you've given me, the opportunity to lead without being physically present.
So I certainly hope that, unlike Reese and Trout, you found this consistent and congruent with your purpose. So,
Indeed. And you didn't even have to pay me $40,000.
Which is the best thing of all.
But okay.
All right, Dennis, thank you.
Well, it really has been a pleasure, Doug. And having followed your career over the last 35 years also, I'm immensely proud of the influence that you have on so many people. So many thought leaders look at you as an influencer. So many clients have had their lives changed, altered indelibly, and their destiny changed forever because of the amazing contribution you've made to them. So if anything I do helps you in your quest, believe me, that's better.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dennis. That's great. Thank you. One last quick question, and really, if somebody wants to get hold of you, how do they do that? Where do they find it from?
Yes. Well, I work, my company is called the Master Circle Global. So any chiropractors listening or health professionals that are looking for coaching, they can call 800-451-4514, or my email is Dennis, 2 N's, DENNIS, at the Masters Circle. That's the Masters, MASTERS Circle, CIRCLE.net, not .com, .net.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you want any more information about today's show, please visit our website at www.essentialcoachingskills.com. Be sure to tune in again next week for our next episode and discover even more about the systems and the secrets that set the best apart.